Sangye Judan Zogi Jonamda Janju Bardo Dani Jabzo Che Dagi Chuji Gibe Sonam Sangye Jobara Jo Sangye Judan Zogi Jonamda Janju Bardo Dani Jabzo Che Dagi Chuji Gibe Sonam Ge Dala Benje Sangye Jobara Jo Sangye Judan Janju Bondon Dani Jabzo Che Dagi Chuji Gibe Sonam Dala Benje Sangye Jobara Jo Major Nanga Namana Mesme Namji Tundana Mayan Namaz Basane Omar Majin Jandawaja. Tejido Tabeju Muji Senya Maguno Gunju Giravon Jindaname Melashin to Sempaze Kansempara Jave Chene Chanju Nangiteme and that the city dozen Shubalas. So then, good afternoon. Good afternoon. So this text, Bodhicitta Paratipam, it was requested by Yeshiyu, and as it is mentioned in the first line, urged by the good disciple Changju Hue, so is requested by Changju Hue. So urged, in urged here, something like around this time in Tibet, there was, of course, the Dharma had already been introduced, and around that time, because of something like different kind of influences, then there was, of course, there were misconceptions around Dharma, around the practice of Dharma, especially in relation to the tantric practice, Tantra. And so this was one of the reasons why Atiśa Dipamkara Shirikyana was invited, because around that time, then there was these misconceptions and something like malpractice, specifically around the Tantra, right? So misunderstanding and something like not knowing how to practice or the purpose of the tantric practice. And for that reason, then Atiśa Dipamkara Shirikyana was invited, and then at the urging of Changju Hue, then Atiśa Dipamkara Shirikyana then shared these teachings. And as we go through these, then Atiśa will give many citations, particularly from the Mahayana Sutras, because around those times it seems that because it was so the tantric practice, one of these misconceptions was that the tantric practice was taken out of the context of the Mahayana practice. It was somehow understood as something like a stand-alone practice, right? Something that is even to say outside the context of Mahayana practice is something like an understatement, because it was seen around that time that there was these many misconceptions and there was something like this prevailing view that the tantric practice was actually against, very much against the Mahayana practice. It was something like they were incompatible. They were incompatible and seen as these metaphors we would say, something like hot and cold. They were seeing something like hot and cold, completely incompatible with each other. So here then Atiśa gives many something like the practices, shares many of the practices which have their sources in the Mahayana Sutras. So yesterday, in the previous session, then we went, I think, till verse 5. So just to give something like a overview of what we covered was first beginning with this verse of paying homage, and then something like how this is being shared, something like the background of the composition of this text, and then introducing how something like our capacity, our mental disposition, right? So this is in the terms of the three parts that are according to the three persons of these different capacities, or something like different wishes or inclinations. And then what is the person of the so-called small capacity is, so then when we as human beings or as sentient beings, then we naturally wish to be happy, and happiness is of two kinds, right? So there is happiness within samsara, and then happiness beyond samsara, right? So samsaric happiness and then nirvana happiness, right? Of these two. And then those of us who strive for samsaric pleasure or samsaric happiness, then this is something like our basic, at our something like at our very like something like primary level, right? Something very basic. So this is wishing for happiness, but without something like the foresight of nirvana. Yeah, so this is samsaric pleasure, right? So when we say samsaric pleasure, then this word samsara is not even conceptualized for most of us who are pursuing samsaric pleasure, right? Because that is exactly why we are striving for samsaric pleasure, is that we do not understand samsara, that we do not understand that this is part of samsara. So in a way, then this samsaric pleasure, striving for that, is really striving for happiness, but without any kind of foresight on nirvana, without any kind of foresight on samsara, without any kind of recognizing our current state, this conventional state of how things are existing, something like our something like how the not knowing the world that we are living in. So this is that, and this is somehow the very basic path and is also crucial in something like actualizing Buddha Dharma. Because without this samsaric pleasure, striving for this samsaric pleasure, then we wouldn't have a base onto a base something like our bodhicitta practices and so on and so forth. So this is something beginning from our present state. This is our present state. So on this, at this level, then samsaric pleasure at this level, it is very much within the context of just these lives or for future lives. So within that, we have these two categories, as it is mentioned in the lamrim, commentaries. So this is one thing, and on this level, then the practices are actually for this part of the person of the small scope, in terms of how to not simply striving for happiness will get us there. So then what are the methods? Then here the method is practicing compassion. So practicing compassion here then is what brings us to happiness, practicing compassion. So therefore, then what are the ways of practicing compassion? That is by being virtuous, being positive in our body, speech, and mind, and then to turn away from harming, to turn away from harmful acts. So therefore, then turning away from the 10 non-virtuous actions, right? So this is at the very basic level. This is at the very basic level, the so-called small level. And now, when we think of the other higher, so-called higher paths, then all these paths, they are related to this compassion practice. They are all related to the 10 virtuous actions, and they are all equal in turning away from the 10 non-virtuous actions. So this, I think, it's helpful to keep this in mind. Then for me, then when I'm able to think like this, then this gives something like much value to something seemingly easy, let us say, right? The 10 virtuous actions, sometimes I feel we take them for granted, because we say, oh, these are like primary level practices, we just take it for granted, right? So then if we are able to see how all of this path, the whole path to this full awakened state, it really comes down to practicing compassion and the 10 virtues, but in different forms, at different levels, in different contexts. So this is, I think, helpful, and then it also I find it helpful in appreciating these so-called basic practices. In fact, these basic practices, if we something like stumble in these basic practices, then then we will, of course, face great difficulties in trying to follow the examples of the great bodhisattvas, right? Trying to practice like the six gone beyond, the six perfections. So then, at this level, then this is really the 10 virtuous karma, these 10 virtuous actions, they are really all encompassing in that sense, and they really are the essential practice that the great teacher Buddha Shakyamuni shared. And so it is something that's, I think, quite basic and fundamental, and in a sense universal, right? Universal in the sense that it is expansive. It is expansive, and without each of those 10, then our practice, no matter how much, something like how many mantras we are reciting, or how many hours and hours of time we spent reading through great, very thick books, big commentaries, then without, if we sort of go out of tune, right? Or if we sort of zone out of these 10 virtues, then our practice, something is lacking in our practice. Our practices, in other words, are not complete. So then to always start from there, right? In fact, if I'm not mistaken, when, for example, we try to learn lamrim, we have to first go with this. We have to start from this very basic path, and then gradually, then we make something like to advance on the path. So this is the starting point. Because it touches on something so fundamental, which is the practice of compassion, right? Practicing compassion, practicing not harming others. This is the core of our dharma. This is at the very core of our dharma practice. This is our practice. So then, even though here there's only one verse on this, still I feel at this point, the paths that correlate on that level, I think all the other verses that are very much, which are elaborating on the paths of the person of great capacity, they are all in a way stemming from this first path, the path that accords with the person of the so-called small scope, and they are in a way they are extensions. Or they are different, something like applications of those fundamental path, these core paths. So then, gradually, then it just explains with these three verses, verse 3, 4, and 5, something like just touches on something like the characteristics of the practitioner. And then from continuing from verse 6, for those excellent living beings who desire supreme enlightenment, I shall explain the perfect methods taught by the spiritual teachers. Facing paintings, statues, and so forth of the completely enlightened one, reliquaries and the excellent teaching, offer flowers, incense, whatever you have, with the 7-part offering from the prayer of noble conduct, with the thought never to turn back till you gain ultimate enlightenment, and with strong faith in the 3 jewels, kneeling with one knee on the ground and your hands pressed together, first of all, take refuge 3 times. Next, beginning with an attitude of love for all living beings, consider beings, excluding none, suffering in the 3 bad rebirths, suffering, birth, death, and so forth. Then, since you want to free these beings from the sufferings of pain, from suffering and the cause of suffering, arouse immutably the resolve to attain enlightenment. The qualities of developing such an aspiration are fully explained by Maitreya in the array of Trunks Sutra. Having learned about the infinite benefits of the intention to gain full enlightenment by reading this sutra or listening to a teacher, arouse it repeatedly to make it steadfast. The sutra requested by Viradatta fully explains the merit therein. At this point, in summary, I will cite just 3 verses. If it possessed physical form, the merit of the altruistic intention would completely fill the whole of space and exceed even that. If someone were to fill with jewels as many Buddha fields as there are grains of sand in the Ganges to offer to the protector of the world, this would be surpassed by the gift of folding one's hands and inclining one's mind to enlightenment, for such is limitless. So, the methods here, such as facing paintings, statues, and so forth of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and then making flowers and incense offerings, and then with the 7-part offering, Yenla Dumba, the 7 limb offering, and with trust in the 3 jewels, so then this Bodhisattva's prayer, Bodhisattva's aspiration, the Bodhicitta, this is, as you know, said to be the king of all aspirations, the king of all aspirations, the supreme of all, the supreme wishes. This is like the most, something like the most precious wish one can wish for, yeah, Bodhicitta. And simply by even turning our mind to Bodhicitta, trying to generate Bodhicitta, even for an instant, this is then so powerful, and something also, I think, whenever we are in this Bodhicitta, whenever we are in Bodhicitta, then something like we are free from all fears. There is no more fear in Bodhicitta, right? All of our fears, this comes from something like a strong sense of selfishness, maybe, right? Self-centered attitude. Much something like being self-concerned. Yeah, from too much of that, then fear arises. So, by being in this moment, even for an instant, something like being in the presence of the Buddhas, being in the presence of the Buddhas and feeling something like their kindness, their presence, and then following their examples, and wishing for the body's mind, speech qualities of the enlightened ones. And just as those enlightened ones, at one point, they were also in samsara, just like myself. Yeah? And it is only through their awakening mind, through bodhicitta, and through engaging in bodhicitta practice, that they have now become fully awakened. Likewise, then for the sake of all living beings, sentient beings, I too strive for these qualities. So even being in this mind state, then we can feel these benefits, right? Not being in this fearfulness, not being in this something like strong dissatisfaction or self-concern. So then the benefit, this is something like the immediate benefit the immediate benefit of bodhicitta. The immediate benefit of bodhicitta is, as soon as you are in bodhicitta, there is no more of this, any kind of fears or any kind of selfish thoughts or something like this negative thoughts arising. There is no, that stops in the state of bodhicitta. All of that ceases in this moment of bodhicitta. So then, giving something like these benefits, the benefits of bodhicitta, and then His Holiness, as you have heard many times before, that starting the day early, then the first thing that His Holiness does is meditate on bodhicitta, conventional and ultimate aspect. And then starting the day like this. So then I think this is His Holiness is a great example of how to practice the Dharma, something like in our times. And then, of course, as well as the other gurus that we have met, when we think of how they have touched us, inspired us on this path, on Dharma, then it is due to their Bodhicitta, And this is the main point, Bodhicitta. So then, to as much as possible to embody bodhicitta, to live bodhicitta, to live in bodhicitta, right? And this way of practicing without making such a big separation between oneself and others, without making this big separation, without having this separation and discrimination, without discriminative thoughts, and also, well, this is, I think, well, obviously, in bodhicitta, how can there be this strong separation and strong discrimination? That is not possible without this self-centeredness. Without this self-centeredness, then how can there be this separation? How can there be this separation? This separation occurs only when there's a strong sense of self. When there's a strong sense of self. So then, of course, there is a person. There's no denying that. But this self existing, solidly existing person here talking, this is the source of our problems, right? It is this solidly existing self. This is somehow, it is part of all this, our something like disturbances and afflictions and something like these problematic thoughts, conceptual thoughts that are experienced, from which arises something like hopes, unrealistic hopes, and fears, unfounded fears. So then, even something like as beginners, even though simply because we aspire for bodhicitta, it doesn't mean that we are on this third path. I don't think it means that. I could very well be on the first path, but nevertheless have this aspiration. Nevertheless have this aspiration to be fully awakened. So then the question is, how do I integrate this practice in my daily life? And now that I see how this mind is positive, wholesome, and conducive to and aligns with what I strive for, which is freedom from suffering, right? To be free of suffering. So then, to remind ourselves always of the benefits of bodhicitta is one way of meditating on bodhicitta. Is one good way, is one method. Sometimes there are days when I don't reflect on the benefits of bodhicitta. Days goes by. Days goes by when I am not reflecting, when even not a single thought on the benefits of bodhicitta. Many days goes by like that. So then, only if I'm able to reflect on the benefits of bodhicitta from time to time, then this helps in my bodhicitta practice. It helps. It is helpful. It supports in keeping bodhicitta alive. The bodhisattva's practice alive daily in a day. Yeah. So then, in the sutras, it explains, for example, the benefits in these ways. So these ways are good, but we also have to something like link to our experiences. Without that, then it becomes something like dry. All the quotations, all the citations we take on from the great collection of the sutras, of the Buddha's teachings. Very good that we hear it, but if you don't, at the very least, if you don't make the efforts to link that to our experiences, what I mean to say is, how is bodhicitta beneficial for me, right? How is it beneficial for me? If I'm not asking this question, then I'm missing an important point. I'm missing out on something. Then it becomes quite dry. So then, to always, to whenever we come across these verses, then to apply it to the practitioner's level, and to apply it despite something like despite so-called limitations. Despite the so-called limitations, these limitations, by the way, are very much connected, of course, with our mental disposition, with our karma, of course, but many times these limitations are something like caused by ourselves, right? In a way, it is interesting sometimes how we word things, right? How we use words in a certain way, or how we choose some certain words. And these words, how we use it, many times they can also get in the way of how we think, right? So in this way, I think the words are not just mere words, but they are very much connected with our thoughts, with our views on things, with how we view ourselves, and in this context, how we view our capacity, our capability. So then, to not limit ourselves, at the very least, to not limit ourselves. I think this is a good thing, to not limit ourselves, to see that this is something like a what is that word? The field leveling, it's a level playing field.
Yes.
What is that word?
Equal level playing field.
Level playing field. Because if I think about it, the mind that I have and the mind that the Buddha has, there is no difference from the viewpoint of the mind in terms of potential. There is no difference. There is no difference. So this, I think, it's a good approach, to not limit ourselves. Do something like say, I can be better, I can be better, that I can be greater than my selfish thoughts, right? Than my self-centeredness. I am more than my fears or my wishful hopes. Yeah? I am more than my mental afflictions, the clashes in my mind, these afflictive emotions. These are temporary. I am more than that. These are not me. To say these emotions are not me, right? These selfish views are not me. These selfish thoughts, I do not identify with those selfish thoughts, with those afflictive emotions. Does that make sense? Yes. So I think this is, I think, quite important, and also, I think, relevant. It's relevant in many of our relations, interpersonal relations. Then, many times, these kind of thoughts arising, very thoughts that are connected with the three poisons. Then, with the three poisons, so then being able to point out those emotions, yeah, to something like to catch them, to catch these thoughts as they arise, and to not let them grow, and then something like propagate our mind stream, to not influence our mind stream. So this way of something like not identifying with these different aspects of wishing or turning away from, or something like not knowing the nature of things, conventional or ultimate, then through this, then of course, this is, I think, something like that is an important component of this practice of bodhicitta. The three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, these of course, when we think of Buddha, immediately we think of Shakyamuni Buddha, Buddha Shakyamuni. Buddha Shakyamuni by reflecting on Buddha Shakyamuni's life and his life experiences, is helpful in understanding this story, the story of being a normal person, normal in the sense of samsaric person, just like us who are in samsara, by seeing and experiencing this conventional life, and by recognizing the state of our lives, by recognizing the nature and the causes, and then coming to this awakening, so Buddha Shakyamuni, when we see this, read his story, life story, his spiritual journey, then understanding what changed, understanding how we are also very much experiencing life. Now, if we also try to emulate how he processed those experiences, the life experiences, then it is possible that we also can go through our awakening journey, this path, the awakening path. And this, of course, can be realized by practicing the Dharma which he shared, the scriptural Dharma, and then the Dharma of realizations and the Dharma of abandonment. By realizing what we have heard and contemplated, then through this realization, then we part away from something like our previous way of thinking before this realization, our previous thought, our previous conceptualization of nature, of the world we are experiencing. So this is the Dharma of abandonment. And then the Sangha, the support. So then, by reflecting in this way, by simply reflecting in this way, then the thought of refuge naturally arises. Taking refuge here is very much taking comfort in the presence of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Something like, I think taking refuge in Buddha means going to the Buddha for guidance. Taking refuge in the Dharma is striving to achieve Dharma. Taking refuge in the Sangha is going to the Sangha for support. This refuge practice is fundamental and something like, as it is said in the scriptures, this is what differentiates a follower of the Buddha from the non-followers. the qualities of the Buddhas, body, speech, mind, these are greatly elucidated in the sutras and in the commentaries. To put it in a more, if I could even use the word, something like easy to understand or easier, is to what we call the quality of the Buddha is the quality of the completion of realizations and abandonment. The completion of realizations and the completion of cessation, nirodha. So this completion is the quality of Buddha. These two aspects, realization and cessation, why we have these two is connected with our something like basic wish, this innate wish to be free from dissatisfaction, to be free from dissatisfaction. So to be free from dissatisfaction, to achieve that, this freedom, the cessation of dissatisfaction from its source, from its sources, from its roots, is very much connected with first to overcome the roots. And these roots is avidya, not knowing. Not knowing. Not knowing is the root of dissatisfaction, of our dissatisfaction. Not knowing. Not knowing the nature of the world. Not knowing the nature of the mind, of our minds. This is what got us in this mess, in our samsara. This is why we are here. It is because we have not realized the nature. So only by realizing, only through realizing, through knowing nature, would we then be able to overcome the dissatisfaction. It's the only way of achieving this cessation. So these two are fundamental aspects of becoming free from dissatisfaction. Realization is the path, and then the result is, of course, the freedom, nirodha, cessation. So this is Buddha. In Tibetan, Bodhi, this word we have, the Tibetan word for Bodhi is Changchup. Changchup. And His Holiness always explains this word, Changchup, is two words, Changwa and Chupwa. So Changwa, His Holiness would explain, it is something like to purify, Changwa, or to purify, to abandon, Changwa is the meaning of, this is the meaning, to abandon is Changwa, and Chupa, Kongdu Chupa, is to realize. So this is the meaning of Bodhi. The Tibetan word, it has both these two words. I don't know whether in Sanskrit this would be the same case. This I don't know. The Tibetan word for Bodhi is Changchup, and Changchup is just as His Holiness would explain, combining these two qualities, of the quality of realizations and then the qualities of abandoning. So the refuge, this refuge, again, this is, as you know, it is something very basic, and it connects with our wishing for freedom from dissatisfaction. And even though in Buddhism we do not believe in a creator as a person, nevertheless, something like the mind is in a way the creator. The mind, our minds are in a way the creator of our current state. That is one way of understanding. If we are not careful with this understanding, then one possible negative outcome is something like blaming ourselves too much for any kind of misfortune we may experience, right? Blaming ourselves too much. When I say too much, I mean more like just blaming and then not moving forward, not taking any key steps, not taking any in a way, not applying the methods, but simply just becoming stuck there. So this, if the practitioner, if the person is not careful, then this could be an issue and become an issue. the good thing about the mind, something like the creator of our world, then this, in a way, it gives something like self-responsibility. That I'm very much, that it helps in thinking that I am now, that I have much say how I think can alter my future. That my mind now plays an important role in my future state, And this future, of course, need not only be thought in the context of future lives, but also something like the next day. How my thinking today, how that can affect how I feel tomorrow. Or how I'm thinking now in this hour can affect how I would feel in the next hour. So we can always apply it in different contexts. Again, here, whatever understanding we have, to use that towards a positive outcome, towards a positive mindset, towards something like self-empowerment, empowering yourself, right? But of course, this self-empowerment doesn't mean, now I can do anything, everything will be fine, and then if you go on like this, I think this would maybe not everything will be all right with this kind of approach, right? So self-empowerment, of course, self-empowerment needs to be guided. It needs to be guided. And what is the guide? Of course, the Buddha. The Buddha is the guide, right? His teachings are always something like a good source. They are something like a guidebook, something like like in owner's manual. It's like one of those manual that, when we buy things, there's always like an owner manual, right? So the teachings of the Buddha, it can be understood, I think, as something like a owner's manual of our minds, of how we think, how to use the functions of our minds. The mind, by nature, has so many functions, and this need not be. We don't need something like a third cause. We don't need that. By nature, it has many functions, and how we use these functions, then I think the sutras, in there we find many something like pointers, pointers on how to use and how to use these functions of the mind in a wholesome way, in a productive sense, in a productive way. So maybe now at this point, if you would like to, if there are questions, then maybe we could I think, do that.
Anybody has questions? Then you can raise your hand. Even from upstairs, okay? So our volunteers upstairs, then which is looking at the iPad. So if you all have questions, you can raise your hand. Okay, Ling Chung.
Rinpoche, I have a question. Just to talk about samsara pressure and nirvana pressure. Can you explain what do you mean by nirvana pressure? And also Buddha also taught about do not cling to nirvana. That particular statement. What does it mean? Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Ling. This is a difficult one. Yes. So I try, and the nirvana pleasure, if I'm not wrong, it is not a feeling. It is not a feeling, but it is referring to the state of nirvana itself, right? And here we use the word pleasure because that is one thing that is a term we would use for something we wish for. So since nirvana is the ultimate goal, then therefore we say the pleasure or the happiness of nirvana, right? So I think it is purely understood as a state rather than a feeling. And yes, I think just it is right how you said, do not cling to nirvana. This is so true. And something like, of course, in a way, we wish for nirvana, but not to cling on to it, right? So this wish, that is one, even in the monastery when we debate, then there's like debate on whether in the enlightened state, whether there is bodhicitta, is bodhicitta does to the Buddhas, does an fully enlightened being also have bodhicitta? Yeah, and do they also have wishes, right? Yes, so we have like this debate points. Yes, but nevertheless, I think wish and clinging, there's something like a different taste. So I think clinging, yes, that seems to be more in the affliction, something like more in the affliction realm, and wish is something like something more basic. There's a purer aspect to that. With wish, I think there's a possibility to also have a pure wish, whereas clinging is a something like more in the direction of strong attachment. Yeah, so more on that spectrum. Yes. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rinpoche. So your teaching focus on the importance of taking refuge in the three jewels. So for us normal human beings, normally when we take refuge in the three jewels, we normally would come from our own motivation, our wish. But when we do liberation, like fish or animal liberations, it is advisable that before we liberate them, we would chant the refuge. So with our wish that we would help them to take refuge in Buddha, Sangha, Dharma. I just want to understand on how does it really works to help them to be really like, taking refuge in animal forms, or how would be the implications after they die, right?
next life, what would be the outcome? Yeah, I really want to understand that kind of the reasoning on why we do so and the impact to those animals when we help them to take refuge. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. So even I think for towards animals, when we recite, when we make any recitations, just as you had shared, for example, the refuge taking verses, and also any other, if there are any mantras or any other recitations related to Dharma, then yes, for sure, I think it makes an effect. It makes an effect to anyone who is hearing these something like sounds, right? And in a way, the sounds is quite interesting. Sounds is like vibrations, right? And in a way, these vibrations are an extension of our wishes. They are an extension of our thoughts. So when we are reciting these verses with coming from a place of trying to benefit, of trying to benefit or bringing some benefit with these thoughts, then I think these something like the holy verses, precious verses, precious in the sense not only from their content, but in the sense that these verses have been said through so many generations of great beings and beings with great intentions. So when I think from all these different aspects, then I believe that this would have a positive effect, that it will leave positive imprints, and also as well as something like watering the seeds of virtue in those beings as well, right? So in a way, I think it is a way of also not only planting seeds, but something like making those seed moist, making them more ready to grow. So I would like to believe in that. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your teaching. Okay, I have a question regarding the environment. Okay, it brings me back to one of your teaching back in USA about a year ago. I watched your video, and you mentioned, I think, that the practitioner and his environment is interdependent. It's non-separable. It's inseparable. So bringing to that, understand that there are some practitioners of certain Buddhist schools, they actually believe in a more rigorous environment, like rigorous environment, like maybe to cultivate in the forest, or maybe in harsh environments like cold countries, compared to practitioners who are in an urbanized state like us. Would you say that the experience or the pathway to realization will be different, the things that they experience between the two conditions. And then the second part to my question is, if a practitioner were to attain a certain state of realization, would the environment be no longer a factor in the pathway to realization?
Or with your first question, what was the last part?
The last part is, what is the difference in the pathway to experience between a practitioner who is maybe living in the forest or in isolation, trying to do their own practice, and of course, normal people like us? Let's say if we follow the same pathway, would the type of experience be different? That means the things that you experience in your enlightenment pathway be different.
Thank you. Yes. So this I think it depends. In regard to the first question, it depends on what it is one is wishing to achieve, and what is the actual practice, what is the purpose of that practice. So this is, I think, connected with that. Of course, for example, for something like shamatha practice, for those of us who are on the very early stages, then it would be a good thing to practice it in a wider environment, right? With lots of space. So something that is more conducive to shamatha. But that's for shamatha, right? Now, in regard to something like a daily practice, if it is for reciting mantras or doing some concise meditation, and you are doing this without any kind of expectations of achieving, let us say, some results. In other words, you are practicing simply because it brings joy, simply because it feels natural. But nevertheless, you are doing it without any kind of expectations, without any kind of something like this objectives list, right? Then I think in this context, then the environment, at least having this very quiet environment with lots of open airy space, with lots of greeneries, and not so many people within like 100 square miles, 100 square kilometers. Such thing like that is, of course, irrelevant. It is irrelevant, right? It is irrelevant. So in this context, if you are simply practicing because it is natural, then such areas would not make such a big difference. Would not make such a big difference. And then the second part of your question.
If the practitioner has actually attained a certain level of realization by then, because the environment is a manifestation of our samsaric world, right? So would it even matter at that point in time already, or it doesn't matter anymore, whatever the environment?
Oh, yes. I think from a certain stage, I think the external environment, I think, wouldn't make much of a difference. Yes, from a certain stage, because where it would matter is because it is only for for the practice, something like when we do the practice, then there's always something like the other side, yeah, the other side of the practice. The other side of the practice would be, I think, something like the thoughts that are not necessarily part of the practice, those thoughts arising, right? The other side. So these thoughts, because for the purpose of something like these thoughts not arising, then we have at from we have to be in a conducive environment, and also something like conducive environment, and also something like a conducive lifestyle. I think is a more inclusive. I think that is a more inclusive term. So living a conducive lifestyle, I think, plays a very important role. From a certain state, then is 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 such a environment necessary? On the one hand, I could say it just like before, it is not, it is not important, necessary to have a conducive environment. But then I could also say yes, because from a certain state, any environment would be a conducive environment. So I think, yeah, it's like a different from different viewpoints, right? Different viewpoints. So again, I just want to say that it is not whatever I say. Please do not take that for the truth. Yes, yes, yes. So whatever I say is maybe is maybe my truth, and my truth is also subject to causes and conditions, and could change. What I think is right today, I might not think likewise tomorrow, right? And anyhow, with this kind of dialogues, then there are so many factors. There are so many factors involved, and sometimes I don't think words can really capture our imagination or our thoughts fully. At least I can speak for myself that, of course, I don't mean to say that my thoughts are greater, but sometimes I'm at loss of words. I have to try to find a word that is perhaps more accurate. So yeah, to your question, I think it's yeah, it's like that. Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
And then when do we resume? 6:30, 6:30 to 8. Okay. Oh, please.
Rinpoche, Kusu Tebu Impe.
Apply.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Rinpoche, I
that.
have a question about if you are a first timer doing meditation, would aroma help in order to introduce to meditation?
What?
Aromatic environment,
Oh, aroma.
meaning sense, smell
Oh,
when you burn incense, because sometimes
oh yes.
we are always 24/7, hustle bustle, especially Singapore. We're very confined.
Mm.
Like the lady said, you got nature, like Damansari, you got high mountain,
Oh,
So would this introduction of aromatic environment help? Based on your,
no.
season experience.
Oh, this I think, yeah, it could help, of course. So this is something very. Whenever we say, is it helpful or not? That's very subjective, right? That's very subjective. So it's a case by case. It's a case by case. And why I'm saying this is that sometimes I find some kind of incense quite intense, right?
Addictive. When you say intent means like addictive. It's like the electronic cigarette.
Of addictive.
Okay.
The opposite of addictive.
Okay.
Yeah,
My
like
words
too
will be too strong.
intense.
Thank you, Rinpoche. Okay,
Yeah.
one more last question, Rinpoche. What about those who are suffering from medical condition where they're lying on a bed, they are recovering, but of course, meditation to them is a big word, even our politician. So what I'm trying to say is, in order to introduce them to this basic meditation, would, this sense help them to bring them to calm mind? When you are worried about your condition, you will tend to feel like, am I going to die? Am I going to this and that, So I feel that, would that help?
Oh, would that help? Do you mean would meditation help?
Yeah, for this person who is undergoing, medical
Right.
procedure.
Would meditation help?
Yeah, with this sense, with this.
With the sense.
That's right.
Oh, like is this like incense kind of?
Exactly.
Okay.
Nothing addictive, of course.
Oh. Yes. This I think this could help. Of course, this is very much dependent on the person for whom or for that person, right? Yes. So if the person finds it soothing, then of course I think that's good. Okay, so maybe when you said addictive, then for those who find it soothing, it could become addictive, right? Right? Yes. For those who find incense like very soothing and feel that this makes it conducive in meditating, right? So just now, what just came into my mind is, yes, of course, incense is good, but then we again have to know, because this is I'm just thinking really straightforward, okay?
Sure.
So then with incense, of course, it's something's being burned, right? And then what are we burning? What are the ingredients? So I think I'm not an expert on this, but then again, to have it using, I think, if possible, very organic materials, and then also with something like having few ingredients as much as possible, not having so many, and especially not having with very long names. When I see the ingredients on the things that we buy from the groceries, when I see these ingredients, and some of these ingredients have really long names, they seem to be quite troublesome, right? So when they have really long names combined with numbers, then I think it is maybe better not to use these kind of things, because even though we may find it soothing, but then what happens, like, when it goes through the lungs, right? So then I think there are all these other things that come into play. So a bit, so that I would go like I would go like a little light on the incense and on the environments. I mean, obviously, we don't want noise is really a big factor, right? Noise is really a big factor in the that I mean I find that noise makes a big difference. Yeah. For smell, as long as it smells neutral, actually I prefer the smell of just like neutral, like nothing so good, and obviously nothing that is that's not the room, of course, should not smell of stench. Of course not, right? But if it is like this, like very normal, then I find that more for meditation, I would find that somehow like it is more conducive as having a very nice incense. With this incense, I find it, of course, even if it is soothing and it smells pleasant, I find it a bit distracting because
So you mean like lavender, all that is a little bit distracting?
which one?
Lavender, or even the Buddhist incense, those are okay, right?
When it comes to incense, it's like incense. There's no difference for me if it's
Okay.
Buddhist or non-Buddhist.
Okay,
For me,
okay.
it's like if the incense smell is like too strong, it is strong. There's like no Buddhist strong or non-Buddhist strong. If it is strong, it is strong.
Understand, appreciate it, teacher. We are just a layman, that's why we are asking such questions.
Oh,
Teacher.
oh, thank you. Yes. Yeah, these kind of things I like to discuss also, because then I feel like I'm sharing. Then I feel like you get to know my personal. Then it's something more personal, right? It's something like personal. Now okay, so this person is not so much into incense. But of course, I'm also like not allergic to incense as well. But it's just like in my if I was alone in my room, then incense, yes, I think once a day is very good. Like in the morning, of course, yes, definitely. And it goes very much. Having incense, I think, goes very much with helping. With helping when we are making these offerings, right? Then it would be actually strange not to have the offering of incense, right? Like without having any incense around, and then somehow having to make the offering of incense would be somehow strange. So having incense, and when you are burning an incense, and then it just makes it so much easier to offer that. It's not only something now that is sort of visualized, but it is also like a substantial offering, right? So you're really then offering this pleasant scent to the Buddhas, and so on and so forth. So this is really a wonderful way of I think practice. Yes, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you. Rinpoche, there's a question on second floor.
Oh yes, please.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for your precious teachings.
Sim, can you go louder?
Yeah, thank you, Rinpoche, for your
Oh,
precious teachings.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing with us a little bit of a preference. So, are you a dog or a cat person?
I'm more of a dog person.
Okay. The second question is more serious. Okay. When we want to try to not get rebirth in the lower realm, so we try to do good things, right? So, how do we prevent ourselves from getting rebirth in the higher realm, like a God realm. And that's not where we the ultimate aim is, isn't it? And I do not want to waste the merits. So how do we prevent ourselves from getting rebirth in the higher realm?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then I think, of course, to dedicate whatever virtuous actions we have gathered to to dedicate that towards something like taking rebirth in the human realm with these 18 qualities, with the 18 qualities. So whenever something like during the dedication, then dedicating whatever virtuous activities, whatever virtue we may have gathered specifically towards this human form, this human rebirth endowed with the 18 qualities. So I think, making that, and also, yes, and just as you're all doing, then to something like in the God realms, at least in the context of the samsaric, in the context of samsara, then of course it is something like more difficult. It's more challenging to even if one is born as a bodhisattva, to something like also benefit others by way of turning the minds towards the Dharma, because of something like in being lost in this kind of strong desire and strong attachment, then it's really more challenging to something like to direct their minds towards the Dharma. So this is, of course, in talking in the God realm within samsara. Of course, I'm not talking about the Pure Lands. That's a different matter, right? That's a different matter. So like this, I think. Yes, thank you.
There's a question over here.
Thank you, Rinpoche, for your invaluable teaching. Earlier, you mentioned that His Holiness, every morning he meditate on Bodhicitta, right? At both the conventional level and the ultimate level. Can you describe a bit how would the Bodhicitta at ultimate levels looks like? And the difference between Bodhicitta at conventional level and ultimate level? Thank you.
So Bodhicitta, conventional Bodhicitta or relative Bodhicitta is this the aspiration, right? The aspiration or the engaged Bodhicitta. And then the ultimate Bodhicitta, then this is it's what we call the view of shunyata, So the view of shunyata with the taste of relative bodhicitta. So this is ultimate bodhicitta.
Sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yes. It's this the view of shunyata, realization of shunyata, non-conceptual realization of shunyata within the relative bodhicitta, with relative bodhicitta. Yes. So this is how the text explains something like defining the characteristics of this ultimate bodhicitta. So the view of shunyata is one thing, and the view of shunyata could also be conceptual. So in this case, it is non-conceptual. And then the non-conceptual view of shunyata, even those on the Sharvaka path, they could also have this, right? So therefore, then it is with the taste of relative bodhicitta. So very much in relation together with conventional bodhicitta. Yes. Yes.
So it's something like a direct view of emptiness.
Yes, the direct
then-
view of emptiness with conventional bodhicitta.
With conventional.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Thank
I
you.
have to think about this.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes. This, for me, I also struggle. I too struggle. These are only words, and because I am not in direct perception, then therefore I can only think of it. I can only think of it. I can only conceptualize. I have to rely on words, right? There is no other way. At this moment, there is no other way. But by forming something like this understanding, view like understanding, then this is what eventually evolves into ultimate bodhicitta. It is our understanding of shunyata. That is exactly what transforms, what evolves, what becomes ultimate bodhicitta. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you so much. Rinpoche, just from what you were saying just now in response to the question about praying for animals and liberation, as well as I was intrigued by what you said about the vibrations being physical manifestation of our intents and thoughts. And I just thought if it was appropriate now to request a lung for the compassion mantra, if it would benefit all of us here.
Compassion mantra.
Of the money, if that would be. I thought if I could make that humble request.
But this, I think you all have received. I think it is safe to say everyone in the room have already received this, and I think many, if not all, have received from His Holiness. So I don't think I can add anything more.
Thank you, Rinpoche. And just one more thing, because looking at verses 6 to 11, as we'd covered earlier.
Verse which? 16?
6 to 11.
Oh, 6 to 11.
It appears to me that this pretty much covers the motivation from verse 6, the motivation for those who desire supreme enlightenment, to say 7, the various practices that we engage in very basically, in terms of images that inspire us, the 7 limb offering, as well, and then of course refuge, and verse 10, would that be the beginnings of the 4 immeasurable thoughts, culminating with dedication for why we want to be enlightened? I mean, that's what I'm kind of reading from. It's kind of like a very concise framework for what we do every day as practitioners. Is that
Yes.
correct view?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Especially from verse 10. Yes. Yes. attitude of love for all living beings. Love, and this is love, and then freeing these beings from the sufferings. This is compassion. So love and compassion are very much, as you all know, very much integral in the practice, in practicing bodhicitta. Oh, okay. So now, I think, is it time for maybe break? So then, I have a good break. Yes. What was that? I remember when I was young, there was this one chocolate. Have a break. Okay.